I'm praying for that.
Turn out the vote. We can get that governor out of here.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening with us in this state. I know I do a lot of traveling, and people always ask me about Florida. I try to do it incognito so they don't know, but it's sad.
Yeah.
All right, we are live. Madam Chair.
Excellent, excellent. Good afternoon, Madam Secretary, Madam President.
Okay.
All right, do we have a quorum?
We do not have quorum yet.
All right. Well, I'll start, and then you let me know when we have a quorum, because there are a lot of things that we definitely want to cover.
Actually, we do.
Excellent, excellent. All right. Well, I'm going to call this meeting of the Circuit 17 Juvenile Justice Advisory Board to order. If you'll indulge me by doing your self-introduction so that those that are tuned in watching us will know who we are. I'll start with myself. My name is Alona Holmes, and I have the pleasure of chairing this board.
I'm Colonel David Holmes, Executive Director for the Department of Law Enforcement with the Broward County Sheriff's Office.
I'm Victor London, Assistant Chief with the Fort Lauderdale Police Department.
From Weeks Public Defender's Office, Public Defender.
Marsha Ellison, NAACP.
And I see Judge Ross in for Judge Ribolo. Is he all right?
Yes, he's on vacation this week, so I am covering. Thank you.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Did I hear Mr. Walters?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Mr. Roosevelt Walters is here. All right, we have a quorum.
Yolanda Brown.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi, good. How are you, Madam Chair, Judge Holmes? Yolanda Brown, the Court Operations Manager, Court Administration for Juvenile Delinquency Dependency Divisions, community member.
Right. And then our liaison with DJJ, Mr. Tevis Bush is present. Good afternoon. If you want to introduce.
Yes, ma'am. Tevis Bush, DJJ Chief Probation Officer.
Okay. All right. At this time, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes, which are electronically recorded now and has been posted on the YouTube channel for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Is there a motion?
Move to accept the minutes from the last meeting.
Second.
All right. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Any corrections? Then all in favor signify by raising your hand or saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the minutes stand approved. At this time, I'd also like to get a motion to approve the agenda that has been distributed. It was emailed out today, so you should have it. Is there a motion to approve today's agenda?
Move approval of today's agenda as presented, Madam Chair.
All right.
Second.
All right, has been moved and seconded. That was Mr. Walters, seconded the motion. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
And any opposition to that? All right, hearing none, the agenda will stand as printed, and I will follow that agenda. I'm going to have to sign off a little earlier this afternoon, but Mr. Weeks has graciously agreed to carry on the rest of the meeting, and I can always watch the recording once I return. And we have Ms. Mashala who has joined us. Good afternoon, Ms. Mashala.
Good afternoon, Judge Holmes.
All right, why don't you introduce yourself for people who are listening in and looking in.
Good afternoon, Gloria Moschella on behalf of the State Attorney's Office Youth Justice Unit.
Thank you. All right, the reminder of the norms are please place your cell phones either on vibrate or the off position so that it will minimize interruptions. Please raise your hand or, get my attention somehow so that you can be recognized to speak. I'm going to ask if you're just speaking on an issue to limit your comments to 3 minutes unless you're actually presenting on the issue. I'm not going to limit the presentations to 3 minutes. So just try to keep your comments short if you can. A lot of these issues that we are tackling mandate full discourse and discussion. Also, please respect the opinions of everyone here on the board. You may not agree, you may vehemently disagree, but please, we're going to maintain civility. And please address all board members respectfully. Since Mr. Obel is not here, that doesn't apply to me today. So, okay. he's ill, so please keep him in your prayers that he will recover from the Dallas Cowboys loss. Next is our chair report. I'm going to defer my report. Madam Secretary and I have been trying to get an audience with Mr. Licata, who is the superintendent of the Broward County Schools, and we've not been able to do that, so we're still working on that. All right, the next thing is the report from the Alternative Prevention Work Group, and that's Mr. Obel and Colonel Holmes. And Mr. Obel sent me an email saying that you would be reporting on that committee on his behalf, also, as well as yours.
Yes, Madam Chair and staff and board members. I just wanted to give you a quick update on what Mr. Obel and myself and his Community Connection organization have been working on. I had several meetings with Mr. Obel and his director, Ms. Amber Vaughn. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to bring the community in Deerfield together with law enforcement and plan a activity slash program for later this spring. And what they suggested is maybe do it right before school is out. So before the kids go into the summer month, they understand that, you know, there's certain rules and regulations and protocols that they need to abide by, and for them to look at law enforcement differently. I've been speaking with the command staff up in Deerfield, and they're going to be speaking with Ms. Vaughn and Mr. Obel to make sure that we have all the resources that they need from BSO for this event. And what they're looking at is a 2-day event. The first day, they're looking at gun violence. And what I suggested, and he agreed, is perhaps doing a gun buyback on that first day, followed by panel discussion with law enforcement, community leaders, and victims of gun violence to spread the word how dangerous irresponsible people are with guns, and how this affected many families, and the negative impact it's had on many families. So that would be day one. And then day two, they would have more of an interaction with BSO providing like our SWAT demonstrations, K9 demonstrations, things of that sort, where kids can actually see the resources that we utilize during high profile events and things of that nature. Somewhat of a national night out, but to the next level. Because, Mr. Obel likes to do it big, since his Cowboys couldn't beat the Eagles, he wants to keep it big. But that's in the works. And I explained to him that we're all in from the Broward County Sheriff's Office. That's a no-brainer. And because he's looking at the spring, I told him, I said, you'll have whatever resources you want, you'll be able to have. We'll have a helicopter come in so, the kids can see that, and whatever they need. So he's really excited about that. And that's something that he'll probably want to do, either annually or every other year for the community. And I told him that, whatever he needed from the command staff there and from us downtown, that we're all on board. So starting with that, his director, Amber Vaughn, she's really, really excited. And I told him, I said, this is easy. This is easy because this is what we should be doing in the community. This should be on a regular basis. And the command staff is excited and they're supportive of it too. So we should have no issues there. But he wanted me to make sure that I gave everyone an update on what we plan on doing, what we're going to do. And we're certain that it's going to be successful, and it'll bring law enforcement and the community together, and his organization will be heavily involved in all the planning stages of it.
Colonel Holmes, before I open the floor for questions, I do have two questions I'd like to ask. Because the Deerfield program is sort of like the prototype, the model for Fort Lauderdale is going to be trying to do something. We wanted these programs to be specifically aimed at kids that are not sentenced to go through programs or anything like that. It's for kids that didn't want to get in trouble. And I'm concerned about the summer coming up. Will there be programming? Has Mr. Obel thought about that for those kids to sign up to make sure that they don't get in trouble over the summer, that they have something to do?
Yes, that was one of the reasons why he wanted to plan this event for the spring. The closer to summer recess, he said the better, because they should stick with them. And he said, I guess there are already talk in the community about his organization planning something like this. So yeah, there's no problem. We definitely want to do it before the summer recess starts, and prevent those from even considering, crossing that line and getting in any type of trouble. But also show the support that we at the sheriff's office, we have programs as well that can prevent kids from crossing that line, and for them to know that, okay, we're not the enemy. Yes, we are required to enforce the laws. However, we have a lot of people within our profession that are community-oriented type of people, and we want kids to stay away from trouble. And we want to show them that there's tons of opportunities. Even there are kids out there that want to pursue careers in law enforcement. Well, we want to educate them and point them in the right direction and say, hey, if you follow this process, you have opportunity to, enter our career field as well. So we're all on the same page.
Excellent. And then I know you all were planning to try to have a meeting so that Fort Lauderdale could join in, see what's happening in Deerfield, and then try to replicate it or do better for the kids who are, especially in that corridor, that northeast corridor of Fort Lauderdale, because the summer is coming, and we can't wait until April or May because the kids are getting out of school in June. So has that meeting been planned or set up, or you still waiting for me? So, because I did promise that I would join if I got the date in advance, just so I could sit in and
Right. I remember that, Judge Holmes. Well, we're probably going to plan it for the beginning of the year, right after the holiday. This holiday season coming up, and then we'll make sure that, number one, you'll be invited, and we'll make sure that Deputy Chief London is involved too. Our partners there, and Madam Chair, if you would be interested in coming too, we would love to have you as well, just so you can see what our plans are. And if there's any other board members that would be interested in attending too, we'll make sure that you receive an invite.
And one more, and then I promise I'll stop. But I'm just so passionate about this, keeping our kids out of trouble. But it seems like every day a kid shows up with a gun at a school, not just in Broward, but in Dade, all over the place. Is there anything, Mr. Weeks, Ms. Michala, that your offices can do to stress the realities of 1020 life and guns on school premises, that is no longer a slap on the wrist? What type of programming, what can you do to get that message out? Because I'm getting tired of reading about it. I guess the kids don't think that 1020 life applies to them, and they are being direct filed when they bring these guns to schools in some cases. So can you all speak to that, or y'all want to meet and see what y'all can collaborate on, or anything separately or together works for me?
Judge, I can tell you this is a great concern to myself and many of our colleagues and many folks in the community. I think the proliferation of guns in the community, i.e. when you make a law that says you don't have to have any registration, you can carry it concealed on you. It encourages folks to say, if somebody else has a gun, maybe I need to get a gun. And then when you do not have to have a requirement of training or background check for a concealed weapons license, it has uneducated gun owners getting guns because they think everybody else has a gun. And then those guns are not properly stored and or protected from children to gain access to them. And we will see a proliferation of the wrong folks having access to guns because there are just so many more guns going to be available out there in the community because ordinary, there was just an article in the paper earlier this week with folks feeling that they need to go to the range and start, practicing and arming themselves because of the climate that exists. And there's no regulation around it. And that is a problem. The more guns in the community, the more likelihood the wrong people get access to those guns. And then children, unfortunately, who make very poor decisions because of impulsivity and adolescent brain development and lack of immaturity, may bring them to schools. And it may bring them to schools because they feel threatened or afraid of the climate or someone else in the school. And that is a problem. We have to look at the broader structure all the way from Tallahassee on down, because you're right, South Florida area, we're seeing it because there are merely more guns available in the street.
Ms. Mashala, you've seen a proliferation of this, I'm pretty sure. What can you suggest? I'm going to ask Madam President of the NAACP. We always do town halls when issues arise to educate people, because we educate the parents. But just recently a 4-year-old was shot by her brother. So anything your office can do, and it doesn't necessarily have to happen in Broward that it gets in my mind, because if it happens in Dade, it can happen in Broward. If it happens in Palm Beach, it's probably happening in Broward. So any workshops or anything that your office can plan to do to get into these schools and let these kids know, guns are not their friends.
So this is top of mind, as Mr. Weeks just said. I echo a lot of what he just said. Accessibility is the #1 enemy for us when it comes to the amount of firearms that are finding their way all the way down to our youth in the community, and not just here, like you said, Madam Chair, but across the country and definitely across the state, because I'm in communication with prosecutors of juvenile divisions, as I'm sure Mr. Weeks is, and John James with other circuits, and they're having the same. It's not just the fact that we're in a densely populated area. The gun violence or the amount of guns in youth hands, and I'm sure Chief Bush could speak to this, is happening all over the state. State Attorney Pryor and I, as well as our Deputy Chief Regina Falk, have met on several occasions, brainstorming. We just had a meeting with Children's Services Council. Chief Bush was also there, where we are about to roll out some programming for youth to try to get ahead of, as you were talking about earlier, the youth that have not entered into the system yet, to get them to understand the, danger in guns and weapons and that sort of thing. And then to echo what Colonel Holmes was talking about, I've also met with Chief Bush, and we've talked about what we can do as far as programming with our kids that are already in the system and are escalating their criminal delinquency behavior, and now they're finding themselves with guns. Many times, I think that the general public doesn't understand guns aren't getting to youth because they're, going across the border to Mexico or something. They're literally getting it in everybody's driveway in every area of Broward County in their unlocked cars. I mean, it's not hard to find a gun, as Mr. Weeks was just saying. They're not having to go very far to find guns. And my frustration is, and I've spoken about this with State Attorney Pryor, we've talked about it, I'm sure everybody has considered it, is we don't really hold gun owners accountable in this country for not not keeping their guns properly stored, because why? Well, we're going to follow the money. Nobody wants to be told what to do with their guns when they're gun enthusiasts, when they're NRA carrying members, whatever it is. We don't hold them accountable. Now, I think in a meeting that I had with some detectives with BSO, and maybe Colonel Holmes knows about this, there was some suggestion about getting at gun owners through insurance, like holding them accountable through their insurance. I don't know how that would work exactly, but it would be more of a civil thing than a criminal thing, because then you're not suggesting that you're going to take people's guns away. So, I wish we could get we're not in a situation, I guess, politically, or political climate is not in a situation to entertain holding more gun owners accountable. But we are, like I said, we have some plans on our side with some programming that we're going to try to roll out through Children's Services Council. I've met Chief Bush, and I talk about this all the time. What can we be doing with our kids that are the most at risk? I don't like to direct file youth that only have a weapons charge if they're not utilizing the weapon yet. So possession of a weapon on school grounds, we may not necessarily be direct filing them depending on their age. But what we have been able to do, and this has to do with some of the changes in legislation, is we can hold them in detention longer than they've ever been held. I do find, I don't know if Judge Ross would agree with this, maybe Chief Bush, I find in my staffings that youth do not like it when they sit in the detention center longer than 21 days. So I get feedback, I hear it. They don't like being there. There used to maybe one turnaround in 21 days, but when you add another 21 days, they're not so happy to sit there. And there is some statutes that support us trying to move for more time when these children are caught with firearms. So we are thinking about it. Is top of mind, Madam Chair, as it is with everybody here, as Mr. Weeks said.
And one more voice, and then I really promise I'm going to open the floor up to everybody.
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes, you may.
We've along with I know the state attorney's office as well, there are a number of community organizations that have gun lock programs where they have thousands of gun locks available to anyone for free. They've provided them to our office, and we make them available to anyone that shows any interest. We're not talking about responsible gun owners, because a responsible gun owner takes the time to make sure that their weapon is secured when it's in storage. We're talking about those folks that may not have the level of training, that may not have a level of experience, that think that they need to have a weapon for safety reasons, and they think it's just like some novelty you can leave, in your glove compartment in your car, parked in front of your house without locking your doors at night. That's not responsible gun ownership. So we have to encourage folks to be more responsible with these guns and how they secure them and store them. But we also have to recognize that the more folks feel that they need to have a weapon because their next door neighbor has one, or the person on the street has one, or when they go to the movies, they don't know who has one in the movie theater, the more guns are going to be available, and it becomes more accessible to folks, especially children that are curious and that will find themselves in places where adults, oftentimes say you shouldn't be looking there, but children oftentimes will look there and they'll find what they're not supposed to be looking for. I just wanted to share the point about responsible gun owners and the availability of gun locks all throughout the South Florida area. Number of folks giving them away for free.
All right. Madam Secretary, in your capacity as president of the NAACP, is there anything that the NAACP is thinking or planning on with the proliferation of guns in youth and in folks that really shouldn't have them?
I think that we ought to educate folk beforehand, not just the kids. So if we talk about, we know that there are the juvenile diversion programs, and those kids are already in trouble, and that's one group. But what about the children who have yet to get into trouble? The ones who are in 5,000 role models, you're talking about hundreds of kids that we can get pre-education on. There's not every D9 group, every Black group has tons of children, and I know it personally, that could be a part of their curriculum as they develop it, something preemptive. Also, educational what could actually happen to you if you are a gun owner, if you're a parent, if you've got kids coming into your house, if you don't secure your gun. Because I know that a lot of times, it's very emotional and somebody didn't know and all that. So I think if we embark on an educational campaign for those parents who have kids in their home or at their home or visiting their home, have it make sure that put away so that they would not, you wouldn't want to see someone else child harmed or worse. And so I think we should take advantage of the opportunities. We could do it through, Gordon's got the cues, and you have the state attorneys always, they already have educational pieces that they're thinking about, but I think widening their audience. Like every meeting we have someone, a statement to read or somebody on there to make sure that we talk about what could happen to you if you leave your gun in an unmarked car, or if you're in your, not securing it at your home. I'm sure the links, the deltas, all of those folk where we gather and meet on a monthly basis, and you're talking about thousands of people, would be happy to include that and your own chapter, Judge, to make sure that people know. And we all know, through working with our churches as well, because obviously it's the problem that's affecting people in our communities, and have them spread the word. And when we talk about doing, because if you want to know, you have to go where the people are. So I think that should be folk, not just the young people who are already in the system, but those who are at our schools. I mean, partnering with the schools. I know that oftentimes when they say we have a program, the program in the district, and I'm not going to say on the Lakota, but prior superintendents could mean they sent a poster to each one of the schools. Well, that poster may or may not get up on the wall. We used to have monthly meetings at Fort Lauderdale. I ain't seen the suicide poster, the other poster yet, nothing else that they said. But make sure that it's happening. Most of our schools do have SROs. They're there anyway, talking to kids, making sure that people know. So I think if we embark on a countywide education, tour with everyone, we have a captive audience when we have town hall meetings, not just us, the district, there's a bunch of everybody's having them. Why not do that and incorporate that into education for both the parents and families and the kids as well?
Excellent. All right, the floor is now open for questioning. I'll throw out a question. I know, Judge Ross, you're limited in what you can say. I'm not asking you to violate the canons. I still read them and teach them. But what can the 17th Circuit do? The people in the black robes, if you all say we need this, sometimes it just really happens when you all jump on board. So have you seen a proliferation? I know Ms. Masala said that her office is very discreet with filing and direct filing children who have guns if the only thing is they possessed it on school grounds. But what have you seen in the courts that we can address?
I mean, I think the lawyers really made some excellent points when Mr. Weeks and Ms. Michelle both said, I from what I'm seeing in court, the easiest way for a child to get a gun is to, these breaking into cars. I don't know what the statistic has got to be, but it's got to be very high likelihood. They open a car door at night that's not even locked, and the gun's under the seat. And that is putting guns in the hands of children so easily. I would guess that many cars that people leave their guns there. And I see it quite often as the most common way that a child can get a gun. Right now, I don't think a lot of the kids know that when that happens and they get caught with it, that they're going to do the mandatory 15 days in the detention center. I know 15 days in the detention center doesn't sound like a lot to, when you're talking about the minimum mandatories that you're used to in adult court, Judge Holmes. But, 15 days for a kid who doesn't have any priors, who just did a stupid thing by, stealing a backpack out of a car, and there happened to be a gun inside of it, they're going to have to do 15 days in the detention center when they resolve that, if they are found guilty of that. So, I just think that the education to both the community, the adults who are leaving these guns unattended, and then to the children, I can't tell you how many kids I've been seeing lately that are gunshot victims. I'm seeing a lot of my kids as coming in as gunshot victims, random gun shooting and gun violence not even the target of the assault. I have some kids that have some serious medical limitations right now. I know DJJ is aware of it and working on it with the specific young man I'm thinking about that's severely injured and now paralyzed for life. I think that the education to the children, seeing the trauma that gun violence could cause and does cause, maybe making them aware of how dangerous it is when they take that gun out of the car and they put it in their waistband, thinking they're cool and nothing's going to come of it. A lot can come of it.
Thank you. The floor is open. Any questions?
Madam Chair, I just emailed you some correspondence that I received from the League of Women Voters of Broward that deals with their gun violence prevention program. It's got quite a few attachments and there's great information that's attached to it. It would be good if you shared it with the board members here.
I'll open it and share it. So thanks for sharing. Okay.
It's some very good information, and it can be disseminated to the community.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. All right. There's a question. Madam Secretary, can you monitor the Q&As? I'm on my iPad today, and normally I don't use it. I use my cell phone, but I have another meeting that I'm attending on my cell phone along with this. Just waiting for them to tell me it's my time to tune in. So,
okay. There's a question that says, maybe I missed it, but how can we put a level of accountability on the adults?
Mr. Weeks, Ms. Mashala, Judge Ross?
You have to have the political will to do that in the state of Florida. Ordinarily, any adult is responsible for the items that they possess that may be harmful to others. But we have a very, very strong Second Amendment movement in this country where people take birth around issues involving guns and responsibility. We have a state, we're in a state in Florida where we have gone backwards. There used to be a requirement that you had to have a training session in order to carry a concealed weapon. You had to demonstrate that you could use a weapon, and there was significant training around that. That's no longer even required for you to carry a concealed weapon. So what I'm hearing from folks in the community, and these are folks that I casually encounter, and they raise the issue because people in the community are aware of it, that everyone they encounter potentially may have a gun concealed on them. So folks are approaching this like, if everyone may have a gun, maybe I need to get a gun. So ordinary gun owners have now enforced other folks who traditionally would not be gun owners to become gun owners without any training or any requirements. So we have a very, very strange climate here, and the will would have to be in Tallahassee to create some accountability for gun ownership and responsible securing and safety of your gun when you store it. That's the reality. It's very, very difficult. We had this same concern and we expressed it very, very clearly when Stand Your Ground came on the scene. We said, oh, it sounds good on paper, but we're going to see some very, very ugly unintended consequences. We've seen it already. Now you have Stand Your Ground compounded with almost everyone in the state of Florida having concealed weapons without any training requirement attached to that. There's not even an insurance requirement attached. You don't have to have insurance. You don't have to have any. All you have to do is go and qualify with your background check in order to purchase the weapon. You carry it concealed. It's very, very scary state that we're in, and that fear is encouraging non-traditional gun owners to become gun owners because it's like a hamster wheel. It keeps going around, and I fear for my friends in law enforcement because each and every one of them that has to make a traffic stop, which is considered some of the most dangerous work that they have to do, they have to be contemplating that every single person they encounter has a weapon concealed under their shirt or in their backpack. So our friends in law enforcement that are trying to engage people and do the things the right way have now a heightened level of scrutiny they have to have for their own safety. And this is all proliferated because we have a gun culture in Florida where we encourage people to just buy more and more guns. Have you guys ever been to a gun show and seen the thousands of guns that they have in there and the thousands of rounds of ammunition? I had to go see it. It's amazing. And people are leaving with bags full of guns and bags full of bullets. And there are gun shows every weekend all across South Florida. So this is what we're dealing with. It's a very scary state of affairs that we're in Florida.
Well, I also think that law enforcement may have to get involved. Years ago, law enforcement used to do what we call PSAs, public safety announcements, where somebody, officer friendly would appear and say, look, the gun safety rules, my department is having a safety seminar, join us, and we'll tell you the right way to do things. I know law enforcement, understands that everybody has a gun, but as has been stated, we have children now with guns, and then the folks that are in Century Village, um, the elderly women whose husbands have passed, they're in the gun shops. They are buying guns for twofold. They don't feel safe at home, and because the rise of anti-Semitism in this state has reached a pandemic level almost. So I can only imagine they hear a noise at night, and they just wake up and start shooting everything, for fear. And and when you're in your house, that like the lady in Ocala, she was researching stand your ground, so everybody knows how to go on Google and prepare their defense. So can law enforcement may want to start thinking this through and maybe doing some trainings. It's wonderful to bring the kids in and let them see what law enforcement has, but I think people in uniforms and robes carry a lot more power. People listen a lot more carefully when it comes from the uniform or the robe. I think the judges have an obligation too. Judges can do town halls. They just can't say how, I'm going to sentence you to death if you have a gun or something like that. But they certainly can go out and educate the public on the danger of what is happening here. So that's my little PSA for the people in the robes and the uniforms. Who had a question? Yeah.
Another question was, can the state attorney's office apply pressure when charging? And maybe she's speaking to what Ms. Michela mentioned about charging. I know she mentioned charging children, but perhaps in the parent, whether the parent, I think it's kind of the same thing, whether the parent or the gun owner will be charged and the authority that they have in doing that.
Well, let me just say this so she doesn't get on the spot. The state attorney's office has an obligation to charge those crimes for which they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt at trial, if it were to go to trial, and not just slather it on just to do it. And they would probably incur the wrath of the judiciary for just throwing. I know I used to say, "What were you thinking when you found this?" But I don't think, Ms. Mashala, I'll answer that for you. That they can only do those things for which there's, number one, probable cause and what they feel they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt at trial. And I'm speaking as a former prosecutor. So is that still the standard for the prosecutors?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Judge Ross, judges don't charge people, and you certainly can't send a message. So you're stuck with what the state charges. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, definitely. But I agree with you on, the judges going out into the community and speaking and doing PSAs and, within the judicial canons. And I just, everyone on the delinquency bench, we would be happy to participate in any kind of program of that nature.
I'll keep that in mind. Definitely. Right. What's Colonel Holmes?
Yes, Madam Chair. One of the things I wanted to add on to what Judge Ross and Public Defender Weeks stated earlier, the number of weapons that are out there because of auto thefts and residential burglaries. The numbers are astonishing. Here at the Broward Sheriff's Office, we have a burglary apprehension team, and 90% of the people that we arrest have weapons on them, whether it's a residential burglary or a vehicle burglary. And those that do get away, 9 times out of 10, those weapons are getting in the homes of people that shouldn't have them. And that's why we have incidents like what took place down in Dade County with the 4-year-old getting shot. That weapon was a stolen weapon. All right. So that's a serious issue. I agree with you. We need more PSAs, more education, so people can understand. Yes, we understand people are getting more weapons because all the anti-Semitism that's taking place, and the world is chaotic right now. However, if you don't take the proper precautions, it's going to end up even worse. And we have to do something about it. And like Public Defender Week stated, us in law enforcement, we're nervous every time we put on this uniform because we don't know what the person has with them during traffic stop or just routine calls. There have been situations where deputies have gone knock on doors and someone has fired through the doors at deputies. That's how dangerous it is. But these weapons, these illegal weapons, are a serious problem because even those that have the weapons legally and that are in their homes, when their homes are being broken into, these guns are getting in the hands of the wrong people, bad people that's into doing bad things. So more PSAs, more education for those that legally have weapons to make sure that the weapons aren't stolen, taken out of their homes, taken out of their cars. We need to do that together to get the word out and educate more people.
I agree. But Mr. Bush, you look like you got some burning thought on your mind.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, we have been dealing with this over in probation. We have a lot of kids who have gun charges. We call them. We actually have a special spot for them. It's called intensive probation, where we have to go out and see them more than once a week. So I have instructed some of my JPOs to ensure that they are safe by contacting law enforcement when they go out to make these contacts with these kids, because we don't carry a weapon. We go out and we knock on doors and make sure the kids are home, and we don't know if they have a weapon or not. So like I said, we don't carry. So I try to make sure they are safe when they go out, and I have them also going out in teams as well. So I do echo everybody else with what's going on with the weapons. Like Ms. Michelle said, we have been talking about some things. I think maybe a couple of meetings back, Detective Boyette got on and he mentioned some things that we wanted to do in reference with kids who are on probation, and even those kids who are maybe in diversion, just having people come out who have been incarcerated with guns, reference to guns, and telling their story. And hopefully their story will resonate through them so they won't continue doing what they're doing. So.
Anyone else? Mr. Walters?
I'm good, Madam Chair.
Excellent. I don't want to leave you out ever. All right. Well, these are some things that we need to address and work on. Miss Brown, did you have your hand up or were you scratching? It's like an auction. If you move, you purchased it. All right.
No, Madam Chair, I have nothing.
All right, excellent. All right, well, I know there's going to be some programming. I can look at President Ellison, and I know there's going to be some programming in the future. And we volunteered Gordon to do that too. All right, let's move on. School Disciplinary Committee report, Secretary Ellison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was another, I'm going to call it elimination of school to prison pipeline committee meeting. A lot of folk who still have no idea. They're looking at promise as it sits now, which is nothing, which is back to where we were 11 years ago, actually. And so we're still looking at ways in which you can deal with children and evaluate their issues without, the handcuffs. We have asked the district to monitor school-based arrests and or civil citations throughout the district. Hopefully, there will be full transparency. We have asked the district to, as they developed a program, particularly we're dealing with children who have some emotional stuff going on, children who are being Baker acted from wherever, not only the schools, because I think they have decided to track that, but they're in the midst of signing the agreements with the different agencies that are on the phone to include perhaps the sharing of information. So if a child is Baker acted from the court, perhaps there would be an agency, and I think Mr. Weeks is looking into that to make sure that the reporting happens, because if a kid gets Baker acted from someplace other than school, perhaps the court or something along those lines, if they are released and returned to the district, and they're there all day and the district has no idea, services that they could have been provided, a connection could have been made, is lost, even if they were scheduled to see some clinical professional that's visiting the school, because they're not there every day. A lot of things could happen between the time the kid is released from the facility and then they are reported back to school. And so they have agreed, the district has agreed to do that. Problem is everybody there at this district who's now has no idea about what worked and what didn't work. So it's kind of starting from scratch. We were looking at, the district staff likes to say, well, we're, doing these things because they're statutorily required. And one of the things, one of the diagrams that they sent talked about what was statutorily required for reporting to law enforcement. And, we're looking at it and the chart says cheating on a test, the district has decided to contact law enforcement. Then it says BB gun, I think they said was class B, not reporting it to law enforcement. So I'm like, well, make it make sense. How are you? So I cheat on a test. I got to go possibly be arrested by the police. But if I bring a BB gun, then I'm good. I mean, so they were saying, well, the disciplinary matrix committee decided they were going to do that. Well, they made a recommendation. And that doesn't mean that it should be policy, and that doesn't mean that it should not be changed immediately. So we have to really drill down to see what's policy and what's statute. And that is not where we are right now. And so there are probably about 4 additional meetings, but it's going to take more than that. The disciplinary matrix committee, I believe, is going to start from scratch and get some different people in, because you ended up with people who just thought that punitive is the way to go. And they were okay with school-based arrests. But yet the children return and come back to the same school with the same problems, with the same issues, with no direction except now they have an arrest record. But if you are those who are, it's open to any of the stakeholders. I think the next one is coming up either on the 13th or 14th. It's open. If you have ideas on how to work with these children, sometimes it's just a matter of delinquent behavior. Sometimes it's a matter of other things that have happened in the community. I did ask Dr. Licata to link up with your office, Chief London, and for the record, I'm not a fan of ShotSpotter, but you can use the data there to determine when you have shootings in and around a school or a neighborhood and the kid has, possibly experienced trauma, if they're returning back to the school, I think that would be your outgoing chief, Chief Lynn. That would be helpful in letting people know that things are going on. I know that there is a system where somebody tells somebody. Nobody at the district knew who that somebody was that's supposed to tell them. They know they get it sometimes, but there is no connection really. And I know that you all were waiting to see who the new chief was going to be. When is his first official day when he takes the reins, Chief London?
He's in place as of Monday.
Okay, and so
and he is 100% in support of the Data for Good initiative that we're launching. As a matter of fact, since you brought it up, I'll speak to it now. We were waiting for our legal team over at City Hall to review the amended contracts with Sound Thinking so that we can share the data with non-law enforcement entities. And we just received that back, so we'll be pushing those out to the partners and the community providers.
Okay, I know that you all they stroking some huge contracts for SROs up in the city, and you all were right up there. So, and I know that your department spent a whole grip on this shot spotter that ain't nobody loving, ain't necessarily working. But I think you all can get some of our taxpayer money back out of it as something that will help out to determine what's really going on with the kids. But it has to be something that the community can know about and help out, so that we won't end up back with the majority of the children suspended, expelled, arrested from Broward County, and we end up throwing away our children like we have done previously. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to continue the work. I will, as I said, to get with Mr. Licata on what's happening to the children every day. And there was some misinformation that thought that civil citations could not be issued. That'd be the end of it from the school. I wish it was. That should very well be. But as long as you have folks like Coconut Creek Police Department, Coral Springs Police Department, you will still have arrest, civil citation, anything else they could do. I'm hopeful that Sunrise Police Department has made or does make a good decision. As you know, law enforcement is a top-down organization, and so Plantation, hoping that it will stop living up to its name of Plantation and get someone who really cares about kids as well, because we have to make sure that all of the kids are protected and treated fairly and given an equal opportunity. So we will continue, Madam Chair, we will get the data, and as soon as I get the data from the district, I will share it with the board as well. And you, thank you.
Right. I'm on a lot of boards, and one of the main things that I find that is a problem is getting data. And I don't know what the problem is. So nobody wants to share their data, because I think the data dispels the myths. When you have hard evidence, people can walk around and say all the conjecture that they believe, but the hard evidence is in the data that is collected and is mandated to be collected by law. So I don't know why it's so hard to get data. Any questions of Secretary Ellison with regard to the School Disciplinary Committee?
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir. Mr. Walters, you are recognized. You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just first, I want to thank the president of the Fort Lauderdale Broward branch of the NAACP for being so persistent and trying to get our school board on a track where it represents all of us and our children, and not just some of us who happen to live in the north end of the district and their children. And I don't know if any of you saw the presentation that was put on by the District 5 school board member on last night. But though the presentation sounded good, well, and just, it was lacking all three of those. But for those who do not know the background of where we once were and where we believe that we have come to, but have not, would believe that he gave a very good presentation and the school board is on the right track, and which is not. I would ask perhaps the chair of this committee and the president of the NAACP to get together, and I will be more than willing to join and have our new city attorney and our new chief of police to sit down and make sure that we get them started on the right course as to what this community needs. I'm not saying that they are ignorant and don't know, but I think sometimes when the foot is on the neck, people have a tendency to listen much better. And I just, if with all the brains that sit on this committee, you would think between all of us, we will have no problems in Broward County. Yet we have many, because they keep us all stressed out and stretched out, and things that matters very little or to nothing. But let me just ask that we have that meeting and once we have that meeting with the chief of police and the new city attorney for the city of Fort Lauderdale, then we can go back to the school board administration and sit down and have some authority behind what we are saying. Right now, the school board really don't give a damn what we say. They're going to do what they want to do when they want to do it, because there is no consequences for not doing. And I get out of my soapbox because this is a hurting subject for me.
All right. Mr. Weeks, and I will leave the board meeting in your capable hands. Thank you all. I'll see you all in December, if not before.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to just make a comment and then I'll open up for comments or feedback from everyone else. I too am concerned about the school disciplinary committee and the work that they're doing. I think based on our observations and participating in these meetings, Dr. Licata and his team, seem to be of good spirit and trying to move in the right direction. But one of the things that I have realized that happens with government is institutional knowledge. Institutional knowledge and the history of how you got there is so important, because it will cause you either to repeat the same mistakes over and over again, or you can avoid them if you have someone to give you the history and the knowledge on how you got there. And sometimes it looks like that's exactly what they're trying to do, is remove the institutional knowledge, not particularly the folks locally, and hoping that folks like Madam President from the NAACP is no longer around to remind them of how we got here. And then they can move forward with folks that do not have the proper footing to guide this process for school disciplinary issues. The problem that I'm foreseeing is that it's like Groundhog Day going to these meetings. We've had these same conversations some 15 years ago in similar settings with folks that had similar complaints, and they're going to come to the same conclusion that we came to 15 years ago. The question is going to be, how are they going to address that same conclusion? Because there are disparities in the way children are being treated when it comes to arrest for minor incidents of misconduct in school systems. And how you're going to address that is going to be where the rubber meets the road. And I think as we're going through this process, I encourage everyone to participate and watch it. And as it evolves, you may recognize that there was some very careful deliberation to create that promise program. There was some very careful deliberation every year to review and update that promise program. And whatever comes out of this particular group, I'm not sure it's going to be that much different than what started 15 years ago. But you know what they've accomplished? They've accomplished a delay from moving forward. They've caused chaos and misunderstanding. And in all that delay and all that chaos, our children suffer until the institution gets its footing again and starts moving forward to try to protect our kids. That's what I'm observing watching this process. It is very frustrating having folks ask the same questions we asked 15 years ago. And we're there to give them the information we've learned and to also hear the new information that they're presenting. But the conversation hasn't changed. We are going to follow the Department of Education guidelines, the school board guidelines, the statutory guidelines, and make sure this thing works. But it's frustrating watching this process. And we threw out the baby with the bathwater. We had a baby that was effective, and we just threw it out and said, let's have nothing and start from scratch. So I'll get off my soapbox. But y'all at those meetings, Ms. Michelle, you're at the meetings, you seeing it. And it's so folks, they're going to take time, they'll get to where they need to be. Hopefully we'll get a productive program that is fair and equitable across Broward County. So any input on that, any feedback on that, Ms. Michelle?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
So we have been in the state attorney's office for years, dating back to Mike, about, I'm just an example, mutual combatants. And so, there were a bunch of even babies being sent over, a lot of out of custody, saying, kids are fighting. Nobody's bleeding. Somebody had to look, with a microscope and look and see if the kid was red. And state attorney's office is saying, we're not doing this. Why are you sending these kids over, and so on and so forth. And then, over the years, they were able to, to explain what that really meant and how the kids, particularly the victim, should not be fighting, and so on and so forth. Well, fast forward to now, they've decided that fight is a fight is a fight, until somebody in their district that they cared about got attacked. They defended themselves, and then they get into trouble. So now all of a sudden the discussion of mutual combatants is now back on the table. So until something happens to them or somebody that cares about them, then we will get what we get. I mean, we had staff there. One thing the district has is records. They have records of what promise the original version was, the second iteration. And they have purposely not included that, pretending not to know, pretending that they couldn't find it. Well, we can Google it and find it in about 60 seconds. So the problem also is that staff is purposely not including all the information that we need. And I do have a bunch of it because I was on that committee for years so that we can, speed up the process. So we wouldn't have to exactly start from scratch. So a lot of this stuff is internal. A lot of this is coming from the newly appointed board members. And, just because you put a face that looks like mine doesn't make it right. That mean that you're not following those directions in whatever time. So it's so political instead of about the people, instead of being about the children. A lot of it is very, very political. And so but right now they're winning. I did happen to see a portion of Dr. Holness's presentation. I think as Roosevelt said, he meant well, but that ain't it. His presentation needs to be more fact. I also would hope that BSO and Fort Lauderdale, being the two largest agencies, would send us somebody who can make a decision and who understands, not just officer friendly. I wouldn't want to go, Chief London, I would go to a homo association meeting and you would send officer friendly and they would say, well, okay, you had 10 crimes. What were the 10 crimes? Well, I think 3 of them was a burglary. Can you give us a little bit more information? Nope. They told me 10 crimes and 3 burglary. We don't need that type of help. We need someone who is going to actually care. We need to know about the training for your SROs. And I don't know who's doing it now. I know that they would get input from the state attorney's office. I don't know if that still happens. Neither does Dr. Licata, who's doing what. We're just out of place, and there is no voice for Fort Lauderdale. And your guy did not make it to the last meeting, Colonel. So we certainly would need folk who get the process and who cares about kids, who can weigh in when we have. I think I saw Pembroke Pines there, and at least one other agency, but not enough there to be able to care about it. Hollywood of all people was there. Hollywood is all over there. But you all weren't there. So I would hope that that would change going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I would like to just follow up on that whole mutual combatant thing. This is really in the weeds for those folks that are listening online. And that I don't have all the nuance of all the minutia, but there are different languages that different agencies speak. Department of Education speaks in one language. They define things one way. The Broward School Board Disciplinary Committee takes input and they define things another way. And then the state attorney's office, which is the final arbiter, they are going to look at things pursuant to the Florida statute. But all the languages speak differently as to the same type of conduct, and then gives guidance that's different based on whichever language you are speaking. And that is the issue. That was the main issue that we had identified some 15 years ago to figure out how to address this, because you have educators that are primarily looking at how the school system defines conduct within schools, but then you have law enforcement that looks at what conduct is defined under Florida statute. And that's the whole reason that Promise tried to build a bridge between those two things to give some parity across Broward County. We're going to confront that issue again. And that issue is very, very complex. But the stakeholders understand it very well. Ms. Michelle understands it very well. We read the assessor definitions, and we've also read Florida statute definitions. Law enforcement, we strongly encourage that they're at the table so they can give their feedback on what they see on the ground as well. So the school system can implement a proper program to address these particular instances. Because mutual combatant, remember, we raised this question at the last meeting. What happens to children when they stand their ground? And I know people in the regular world don't think that children have the ability or the legal support to stand their ground. But there's a case that's directly on point. It's where an incident occurred on a school bus in Broward County. This is the case that created this law. And the judge ruled appropriately at the time that there was no duty to stand your ground on a school bus. And the 4th DCA overruled that and said a child can stand their ground if they were legally appropriate to be present on a school bus. So that gives rise to children being able to stand your ground inside a school setting. So if you're a mutual combatant and you're standing your ground, these are the issues that we have to address and resolve. But it's easy to throw out big, platitudes. The Promise program is wrong or bad, but the Promise program had already addressed those nuanced issues, trying to make sure that every child was treated appropriately moving forward. And that's just one of the nuanced issues. But we will work through those issues and support the school board to come to a appropriate program. But the year or 2 years that we take to do that, our children in Broward County schools are suffering. They're suffering. They're not getting the supports that they were getting before, and they're not getting the family interventions to make sure that behavior stops. So
let me just say that the question asked, Mr. Chair, was by the school board member. If a child gets attacked, if somebody's beating your son up, he's minding his own business, somebody starts punching him and start laying him out, should he just get beat up or should he defend himself? And if he defends himself, does he get arrested, suspended, expelled for defending himself? And the district was not able to answer that question. So if Victor,
and
you
the
got a
reason
son,
why
what you telling your son? You know,
the different difficulty in Florida is because if you have a zero tolerance approach, everybody gets arrested. And that may not be supportive of where the case law is for standing your ground. And that's why you have to have these conversations with legal at the school board, the folks that are implementing these policies, to understand that you got to dig a little bit deeper. There are other issues at play to make sure that it comports with the school system, safety, and the law as it stands in the criminal justice arena. So it's a valid question, Madam President. It's a
I want to know what y'all telling y'all kids. That's all I want to know. You got 2 sons. I don't know what the rest of it. What y'all telling your kids? Let's get beat up. Don't worry.
I have 3 sons and they're all adults, but I do have 3 grandsons that are in the school system, so it is concerning. When is the next meeting so that I can have a representative present?
I'll send you the schedule. I'll forward you what they forwarded me and you can get on the email.
Yeah, if you could send that to me as well. I got a text in to find out if anyone was there, and if not, why weren't they there? So, but if you could forward me the schedule.
Well, I'll send you what they sent us.
Sure. ESO was there at previous meetings. They weren't there as Ms. Ellison said at the last one, but they had been there in the first couple of meetings, Colonel.
Oh, okay. All
right.
Know what happened this one.
Seeing that we have no further conversation on that issue, Mr. Scheller, do you want to add anything on behalf of the State Attorney's Office?
I mean, obviously, I agree with what you're saying, Mr. Weeks. I would just say that the thing that's frustrating to me is we're doing a very slow process because we're having exercises around things that are common sense, obvious stuff that we could answer right away. You've got all these attorneys in a room and you're asking us to sit and do these philosophical exercises around school behavior and student behavior when we already have the data that showed us. The most disturbing thing to me was the day that you asked the question about Western High School or whatever high school has 4,000 students versus I think it was Boyd Anderson that had 1,500. And the Promise program was supposed to create that consistency among all schools in the district, and we're still finding that that's not correct. So for me, we should be jumping ahead to the question of, are we having over-reporting in schools with students that don't deserve it? Is it under-reporting in schools where parents are blindly thinking that their kids are safe? Is there a combination of does administration need to be educated better? Do they not have enough support systems in those schools with over-reporting, or with maybe they're actually reporting appropriately, but they need a better support system so that they don't have to report? I mean, we should be there, because my concern is that we had a Promise program in place that was supposed to be making it more equitable, and and those numbers were disturbing to me. So you're right. We're starting literally at ground zero. It's probably going to be 2 years from now that we're going to be sitting at this CAB meeting still talking about whether we have anything that is in place that mirrored even closely to the Promise program. And I do think that politics are playing a role in that. And I think the district is using a lot of edu-speak, because if they're not careful about what words they use, they have somebody watching over them, all the way in the north part of Florida. So in their defense, I think there's this sort of struggle with how do we not make this political while we try to go back to a programming that was working. I mean, maybe that's just me being a little bit giving them the benefit of the doubt, but the process doesn't need to be as lengthy as it's taking. We could be cutting corners already because we have the knowledge, like you said.
You raised one of the most important points. The issues that you raised that we should be addressing are the issues that we had incorporated in the first promise iteration to readdress promise every year to look at the shortcomings and strengthen those shortcomings. If there is underreporting in a school, that school needs to be retrained. Their administration needs to be retrained with the definitions and the process. If there is over-reporting in a school, they need to be retrained and to be addressed. That is what this program was designed to look at, those nuances and fix them. But we threw everything away, and now we're starting from scratch. And we have to go through this whole process to even get back to this point to improve upon what we already have. And that's the frustration I have. Many of us that are on this call have expressed the frustration. If you go to the meetings, because we want this to move quickly and efficiently and effectively, so there's safety in our schools. Because think about this, if schools are underreporting, and this is why I'm going to speak a little bit from the state attorney and Ms. Michelle is, I apologize, but if they're underreporting, is there stuff occurring that law enforcement is not aware of or administration is not aware of? And that is a problem. But when you compare it to other schools, inner city schools, they're over-reporting. So is there a social, economic, or a bias issue that is causing the over-reporting as opposed to the under-reporting? So you're actually creating a more unsafe environment when you throw everything away and you do not have something that can monitor what's going on in these schools. And that the Promise program was not only designed to address a child's behavior, it was designed to look at what was going on throughout all the schools to make sure they were all doing it the same way. So you got good information as to what was going on in schools. So I'm not going to belabor the point. We could talk about this forever because it's a very important point for our community. And it's taken a lot of attention for the state of Florida. But we're going to persevere and push through it. And we have the institutional knowledge. Ms. Michelle has been around for a long time. She remembers this very early on. Madam President was from the very beginning. We have some folks that have been there from the beginning. We can help guide and offer information. Mr. Walters has been there, and hopefully we'll be able to shepherd them through this lengthy process to get a productive program in the end. I'm going to move it on to a report on our data report it's supposed to be from me, but I'm going to defer to Ms. Gaynor and Ms. Michelle on this issue. We had our meeting on data. I'm not going to belabor us with the slides because I think we need to save that for another day from the Department of Juvenile Justice to present the slides. And I'll let Madam Chair make a determination on when that's going to occur. But I do want to talk about some of the findings that we had and some of the recommendations we have for the community, recommendations from the committee to move forward to this body. So Ms. Gaynor and Ms. Michelle, if you want to present on our meeting on the data, the subgroup.
I can start. Good afternoon. Okay, so from our subcommittee group, in the evaluation of the data, the first thing that we realized is that everything we've been talking about in relation to the agencies and the disparities within the agencies as far as missed opportunities, that data shows exactly what we were already seeing. And it's the same municipalities. We specifically identified Coconut Creek and Coral Springs. And the recommendation from that is because we already did the what Ms. Marcella called the world tour. The recommendation is that we work with the stakeholders, specifically the state attorney, the public defender's office, representatives from the county, to meet with those city managers as well as commissioners to see if we can move our efforts from that aspect, since we already met with the chiefs. That was the first recommendation.
Ms. Michelle?
Did you have something further, Ms. Gaynor?
I have additional, but if you wanna add to that, then that's fine.
Yeah, I'll jump in because I think it might actually, from the recommendations that we had in our meeting last week, I spoke with, as I told our members, I would be speaking with State Attorney Pryor about the findings. I actually sent him the data so that he has it before him. We met together, myself, the deputy chief, and state attorney, and he wanted me to let the board know that he was going to be immediately reaching out to both chiefs of police in Coconut Creek and Coral Springs. Coral Springs does have a new chief, Chief McKeon, since the time that Ms. Gaynor and I met. He was also going to be reaching out directly to both city mayors. And he was going to reach out to Josh Rydell of Coconut Creek as well. He wanted me to convey that to this board and let you know that if you just give him this next couple of days to reach out to those parties, he's going to then provide an email or have me provide an email to the group so that we can tell you what our follow-up is to our subcommittee. And he will be in touch with Mr. Weeks, because I did tell him that one of our recommendations was that if necessary, both the public defender's office, Chief Bush, and the state attorney's office would join forces to meet together with these representatives of these cities and these law enforcement agencies. State Attorney Pryor said that Mr. Weeks said that if just give him some time to reach out to these parties, and if he believes that it's necessary to do that, then he was going to reach out to you directly anyway. So I think by next week, it's because we're closing out this week, I'll speak with State Attorney Pryor again, and I'll make sure that I have some kind of response to our subcommittee group and that we're moving in the direction, or if we need to set up something else, he'll be in touch with you, Mr. Weeks.
Yeah, I'm going to pause right there. I know Ms. Gaynor has additional to add, but just to give you a little background, we reviewed all of the data that was submitted by the Department of Juvenile Justice, and we want to thank them for giving us a very thorough report. It has slides, it's colored, it's very pretty. When they present it to the body, you guys will be able to follow it. It's very clear and it makes a lot of sense. And it's jumped out immediately. So we asked ourselves in the committee, what have we done already? And we learned that we've done everything already. The state attorney through Ms. Gaynor, through Ms. Mishala, Ms. Gaynor have already, and along with DJJ, have gone out and presented to a number of the law enforcement professionals and encouraged them to use civil citation. But we recognize the data is showing that in certain areas, they're not using it appropriately. There's still a number of missed opportunities occurring. So it seems like we had a conversation on the best approach to educate these folks, and we recognize that there's been a lot of change of leadership throughout Broward County. So in the abundance of caution and not, poking folks directly in the eye, which it's oftentimes the best thing to do, but not going to do it. We're going to reach out again. And the reach out is, I think it's appropriate to have State Attorney Pryor reach out if he's going to take the leadership on that. I will circle around as well and offer any assistance in trying to explain it. We've asked the Department of Juvenile Justice to provide the data on the actual children that miss their opportunities. So Ms. Gaynor, Ms. Michelle, and John James can do a deep dive on each one of those children. So when I meet with them, we can show them these children in your community could have received civil citation and they did not. This is your responsibility because those children were not afforded that opportunity. To make it real for them so they can see the impact it's having for children in their community. It's one thing to see numbers on a slide. It's another thing to say this child in this community at this address, get engaged in this minor contact, and your officer could have given them an opportunity to engage in a very meaningful program that has a very, very high success rate. It's about education. So let's let my recommendation to the board is to give Mr. Pryor some time. By next meeting, we should have some follow-up. We can circle back individually and talk to these folks in these respective cities. I've already talked to my staff about setting up some meetings with various individuals in these two cities and having those frank conversations one-on-one. Tell me why or what's going on, and I can educate you on this program so you can understand it's helpful and it's beneficial for your officers to participate in it. You know, sometimes it's just a matter of not understanding it. Sometimes there's, politics at play, but we need to have those frank conversations. And I think it's important that Mr. Pryor have those frank conversations. It's one thing to talk. We recognize that talking to the chiefs are important, but we also have to talk to the city managers and the commissioners because they give direction as to what is appropriate in their respective cities. So that is our recommendation to the board. We'll have some conversation around that. Any other guidance that any board members can give, we're more than happy to follow that as a subcommittee. Any questions or comments?
Yes, Mr.
Holmes.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I know about a year and a half, 2 years ago, myself and Cassandra Evans spoke at the Chiefs of Police Association meeting, requesting that all of the municipalities get on board with issuing the civil citation to the juveniles. And it's the same group from back then that are included now. So therefore, they made the decision not to participate back then, and they're doing it now. So I highly recommend you go above them and go to the city managers and go to the commissions, because those are their bosses, and those are the ones that can have an impact on whether they participate or not. Because they didn't listen to us, and we gave them every opportunity to do so.
We recognize the law enforcement politics that are play, and you are the representative from the largest law enforcement agency in Broward County, and sometimes that comes with great responsibility. But when you have other chiefs of police in their jurisdiction, there's some professional professional animosity, jealousy, or whatever that goes on. And they don't oftentimes like to take direction or instruction from the largest agency. And Assistant Chief London is the second largest agency. And when you two combine on an issue, it becomes, that law enforcement dynamic that we watch occur, where they want to do their thing. They're their respective chief. They don't want to be told from another chief in another large jurisdiction what to do, and they take direction. So although you guys have made your very valiant efforts, and we appreciate that, we're going to have to go hit them again and have some one-on-one conversations on what is causing them not to embrace this. And then we'll report back to the board. Assistant Chief London, do you have anything you would like to add?
I agree with you, sir. You're hitting the right direction. Same as what Colonel Holmes said, that if we can get the top people who are hiring the police chiefs on board, the police chiefs are going to listen to what their bosses say do.
I'm going to tell you something, though. We're approaching the holidays, and it's hard to get meetings with people at this time of the year because folks are taking vacations. There's a number of community events that folks are involved in. So I don't think this is going to be accomplished, because I want to have face-to-face conversations. It's not going to be accomplished within 2 weeks by the end of November. This probably will be a protracted effort from the remaining of the year, trying to get these one-on-one sit-downs with these folks to educate them and answer their questions. So just give us some time, and we'll try to report back. Any other feedback? Judge Ross? I keep wanting to call you Judge Robolo because you have it written there, but I know you're Judge Ross.
No, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, I would suggest, I remember when Josh Rydell was running for office in 2020, he said, "Oh my God, I had no idea our police department was flagged by DOJ even Civil Rights Division, and by DJJ. I never heard that, and he bragged that he was the commissioner in charge of law enforcement. And so we need to make sure that that you take your facts with you.
And that's why this is so very important. We cannot do this effectively without DJJ giving us those facts and Miss Michelle and John James dissecting those cases so we can tell them the story about what happened. They need to know that on their level so they can impress upon the city managers and chiefs of police to move this thing forward. Any feedback, Ms. Gaynor? Did I miss anything? Ms. Michelle, did I miss anything?
Nope.
All righty then. So I'm going to turn back to Ms. Gaynor, and I'm going to ask you to give us our continuing report, not only on the data work group, but on civil citation and missed opportunities, because it falls right into this area.
Okay. The other recommendations were pretty clear cut. We noticed that of the individuals who were not offered a civil citation, who were eligible, many of them were domestic violence related, which are not eligible according to our county. So we looked at that. And then we also looked at the assault and battery, which was the highest, which is always the #1 charge in the last couple of years. And we compared the school-based to the community arrests. That data still substantiated the different agencies. And when you looked at the schools as well as the zip codes, that also confirmed it. One of the concerning things that we noticed with that data is that when there's a reason provided for law enforcement, the reason they didn't offer the civil citation, the reasons are different. So for school-based, there was one set of reasons, which I think included 9 different reasons. And then for community-based, there were seven different reasons. So one of the things we recommend is that as a circuit, we determine which drop-down we're going to use. The drop-down in JJIS is created for the entire state, but I think that we need to make a determination on which drop-downs we're going to use for our circuit. And the reason why we say that is because, let me give an example. For example, in our circuit, we have a certain list of ineligible offenses. They include the domestic violence related offenses. They also include weapons charges or sexualized related charges. In the drop down, there's basically a catch-all that says ineligible offenses, local policy. And what it looks like is that reason is being selected for agencies who have made a decision that they won't issue for certain things. Now, that's an agency decision. That's not our local policy, because our local policy says that for battery, that is an eligible offense. So the recommendations is basically to streamline those so that when we're looking at the reasons why officers didn't issue, that we have clean data and we understand why. We haven't exactly went over those to make a determination, but that's something that needs to be done in order for us to be able to look deeper into the reasons why law enforcement agencies may or may not be issuing a civil citation.
Let me stop you right there, Ms. Gaynor, because I want to get some feedback from Mr. Bush and our law enforcement professionals. The issue that we've identified in the subcommittee is that the catch-all category is what they're using to circumvent the policy or the practice that we expect in this community. And those are the ones that are highlighted most on those agencies that are not following the practice. Who, Ms. Gaynor, is responsible for having that catch-all on a drop-down menu? Do you create that through the county government, or is that created from Tallahassee in the Department of Juvenile Justice?
So those categories are created, I guess, through Tallahassee, because it's DJJ's system. Now they're entered locally at the JAC, or maybe in some cases at the clerk office. I'm not sure. Mr. Bush can clarify that. But when law enforcement bring a youth into the jack because they've been arrested, this is being entered by either DJJ or the contracted staff. So I think that's where it's coming from. I would also venture to say that if it is a mail-in, I'm not sure if it goes directly to the jack or if it goes directly to the clerk.
Mr. Bush, I suspected that those drop-down menus were part of your JJI system. What, if anything, can you recommend or suggest that we do on a local level to modify the accessibility of using that catch-all? Because if you remove the catch-all, and it requires law enforcement to pick the appropriate area, and where it doesn't, if they can't pick the appropriate area, then that would encourage them to issue the civil citation. So your feedback on that?
Yes, thank you. Sorry. Like Ms. Gaynor indicated, it is captured at the jack once a youth is brought into the jack center. The screener there, reviews the charge and also questions the officer whether they would like to choose civil citation over having the kid arrested for that charge. So we do have a form that we fill out. And of course, all of those, like you said, all of those are part of our JGIS. So I will probably have to get with our data integrity person here to find out how we can look at that, possibly maybe change some things up, but that would definitely have to go through them. And I have to say is that if they do give us that catch-all phrase, we try to the screener does try to get more information out of the officer, but unfortunately sometimes they just pass it on as with the catch-all phrase. So
it would be very interesting, Mr. Bush, for you to look at how often that catch-all category is used for the state of Florida, as opposed to just Broward County, because I think what we're looking for here in Broward County is that it's not even an option to select the catch-all, that you have to pick one of the clearly defined reasons for not issuing a civil citation. So Ms. Gaynor and Ms. Michelle can do their follow-up to show that it was an appropriate missed opportunity. And with the catch-all, we then have to dig incredibly deep in order to see if it was appropriate or inappropriately not issued. Am I stating that correctly, Ms. Michelle?
Yeah, I'd have to actually go and read the facts of the case to determine if that's something that should have been eligible. Yeah.
Ms. Brown, I see that your hands are up.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Chair. I have a question. Ms. Gaynor is saying that when the youth are issued a civil citation, they're being entered in JJIS?
I don't want to speak for Ms. Gaynor, but yes, it's the prevention web they're being entered into.
Okay. And then she's comparing the youth who are entered in JJIS in the prevention web to those with missed opportunities. And what's the catch-all phrase that you're seeing?
And just so I'm clear, I don't want to misstate for Ms. Gaynor, but when you intake that child into the jack and that child is eligible for a civil citation, but they do not receive a civil citation, they have to designate why they did not issue the civil citation. And there are very clear reasons for not issuing the civil citation. The catch-all reason is what we're seeing is problematic for us here in Broward County. And Ms. Gaynor's recommendation is for us to remove that catch-all reason for not issuing the civil citation. So they need to designate one of the other 9 reasons for them not to issue the civil citation. Am I correct, Ms. Gaynor?
Well, okay, so yes and no. And the reason I'm saying that is because the problem with the ineligible offense type, it has local policy. And what I think is that they're using that particular drop down to capture that the agency's policy, because we have a local circuit plan. So we know according to our circuit plan what is eligible and what is not. What I'm recommending is that when there's an offense that is not eligible because it is ineligible based on our local policy, then we utilize that drop down. if it's something that is not it is not eligible because the agency doesn't want it to be eligible, it needs to be documented in another drop down. So that's what I'm recommending, because it's confusing, because a lot of them says ineligible local policy, but if you look at them, a battery for us is eligible, but a Coconut Creek who decided not to issue for battery, they would put that, it would be put in that category. So I want it separated.
Understood.
So that when we look at that, we know that our local policy has restricted these particular individuals from participating.
So with that clarification, Ms. Brown, do you have any follow-up?
Yeah, it's so you would want, so would we continue to use the prevention area, or you want to create another category for the battery?
Right. So no, we would continue to use prevention. And what I'm asking is that the state's not going to change their drop down, because we've had this conversation a number of times with the state and the local data integrity officer, as well as her supervisor in Tallahassee. They're not going to change their drop down for us. So locally, we need to make a policy decision or a process decision to determine which drop downs we're going to use for what and which ones we won't use at all, because it's just not appropriate for our particular circuit. It would still be in prevention web. And then once we make that determination on which drop downs will be utilized for what, then I volunteered my staff to go ahead and go back to the JAC. We go and provide training to them annually, sometimes twice annually, and we'll cover that with them so that they can just stop using the ones that's not appropriate for our circuit at all.
Ms. Gaynor.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I'm going to take some privileges. I need your guidance on this.
Okay.
Would you be able to clearly delineate the process that you would want from law enforcement or DJJ when they're entering that data into JJJIS?
I would definitely be able to do that for DJJ or their contracted staff, whichever one is actually at the JAC.
Would you be
because
able to,
they would be the one entering.
Would you be able to do that in writing with some very clear steps, walking people through it?
Yes.
The reason I'm asking that, Ms. Michela, is we have a local civil citation policy that is statutorily required pursuant to state attorney's office, public defender's office, clerk of the court to enter into that. We did that some years ago. Maybe we should revisit that as the new year is approaching, have a civil citation subgroup to meet on that and see if there are any updates to that policy, including some guidance on that issue that Ms. Gaynor is pointing out. And then we can redistribute that along with our meetings that we're going to be intending to have with these respective cities and chiefs of police. Give me some feedback on that as a body. If that is the will, we can do that.
So you want to go back to our subgroup and meet on what those things that we need to tweak locally?
Correct.
Prior to meeting with any law enforcement agencies that are not utilizing it the way that they should. Is that my understanding? Okay.
So we can have a very clear, because our juvenile justice Circuit 17 civil citation process and program is the governing very broad. I think some of Ms. Gaynor's recommendations are very valid. That if we incorporate them into our framework, it will make it much more clear. Then we can distribute that along with our conversations to our respective agencies. I think putting things on a silver platter and making them very easy for people to follow is going to help us in the long run. We cannot expect law enforcement to interpret what we would like them to enter things into the system. We need to give them guidance and examples of this is what this particular category means to us. This is what this particular category means to us, rather than letting them pick and choose what they mean to them locally. Is that what you're looking for, Ms. Gaynor?
Absolutely. And I think in that conversation, it also needs to be included that they actually need to provide a reason, because when you look at the data and when we're actually able to review the report, we'll see that a lot of times that no reason was provided at all.
And
So
I
think
think
that's
that's where we can strengthen our Circuit 17 civil citation program with some guidance on what do you do when the child does not qualify for civil citation? How do you properly document that? And I think that's the guidance Ms. Gaynor needs and the guidance we need in order to track those things on a data standpoint. So I'm going to take, just based on the conversation and the questioning, I'm going to ask that we have a brief call before the end of the year to just discuss a framework on revisiting our civil citation program. And if there's will in that subcommittee, then we work on trying to update that for 2024. Sounds like a plan?
Support.
yes.
Excuse me?
Support.
All right, we got support around the room. I've been seeing heads nodding. You know, that's a lot of work in 2 months. That's a lot to do. We're very ambitious, but I think we can pull it off.
And
So
Mr. Weeks, we only have one. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, madam.
We only have one more recommendation. And what we said was that when we looked at the data, we realized that the youth that were actually eligible for civil citation, we looked at it from the school-based arrest compared to the community arrest. And one of the things we want to do over the next few months is that we want to look at the change in the numbers for both the school-based and community arrests in light of knowing that there's been changes with promise. And then once we look at those, we'll look at that data and come back with additional recommendations.
And the Department of Juvenile Justice is assisting us in pulling that stuff together, correct?
That's correct.
Ms. Michelle, do you have any feedback on that?
Actually, I think that was part of my suggestion at the meeting, because my concern is that now that we don't have promise in place, these same agencies are going to be, and I think Ms. Ellison has expressed this in the past, those same agencies are going to be utilizing that civil citation arrest, civil citation at the schools rather than maybe using discretion that Colonel Holmes's department uses on a daily basis. So again, we won't have consistency across schools, across this county, and you know, it's just unacceptable. So yeah.
And to be completely transparent, my office has already received a request from the school board's investigative unit requesting civil citations and brochures. And that was last week. So, wow.
That's scary. That hit us like a Mack truck. Wow. All right. So I guess there is it's pressing time for us to get together and have this conversation on civil citation. Let's get it done. I'll have my my staff reach out to Ms. Gaynor, Ms. Michelle, Madam President, and any other board members that are interested in having a conversation about updating our civil citation agreement. I will extend the invitation to the clerk of court and all the other statutory members that need to be present, and we can address that issue before the end of the year so we can be prepared for 2024 fresh.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Walters.
Put me on that committee and I will do my best to attend.
I'm putting your name down right now. And I am happy to see you with us today. It's always good to hear your insight.
I for some reason I was blocked out on the last two. I was trying to get in. I was calling everybody I knew, but I lost all my friends. But nobody called me back but Marcia.
Well, you know, you always got a friend in me. You can always call me or text me because your institutional knowledge and your history is very important, because we are destined to repeat the same mistakes over and over and over again if we do not learn from them or remember them. So keep the fight going and keep us hold us accountable. I appreciate that.
I will do that, and I like that. I say to Ms. Gaynor, when I look at your report, can I tell from your report who is the victim of the missed opportunities? Would it tell me how many males, how many females, how many black, how many white?
Yes.
Because to me that's very important. And the reason I'm asking for that is because one of the things I like to do is to look to see if the missed opportunities was intentional. And if we got people, and I told Marshall about the Coral Spring person and what he thought about the Promise and the Civil Citation programs, but I just want to be able to determine and making sure that we are working on the problem. And I don't believe in getting rid of the tree by cutting the top off it. I like to dig it up by the root.
Ms. Gaynor?
So just so that you all are aware, when I get the missed opportunity report, I do get it from the Department of Juvenile Justice. But one of the things I do is I do look at it according to the demographics. So while I have not really provided a written missed opportunity report to the board, we definitely have that data. And when I do the verbal report, I have it. And if there's an instance where you want a written report, then I can provide that data to you so that you can have it to be prepared for whatever you need it for.
I appreciate that.
I was just looking at the agreement. It's right here on my desk for us to update. So let's, Ms. Gaynor, if you can start working on just trying to clarify all of the definitions for each one of those categories so we can define what each category means when it's a missed opportunity. I think that's the first step, is to make it very clear what we're looking for. And then we'll have that meeting and discuss how we redraft this instrument to be clear for all folks in law enforcement, all folks in the community, what the expectations are for civil citation. And I guess we're going to have a small subgroup reach out to the school board and circle back to our school disciplinary committee and make sure that civil citations now doesn't become the new form of discipline within school systems. It was not ever the intended it was never intended for that to be the case. But the fact that they are reaching out for actual civil citations seems to suggest that they may be going down that road. We need to have some conversations about that. Any other feedback on these issues? Judge Ross? Colonel Holmes? Assistant Chief London?
I'm in agreement. We need to move fast.
You got a lot to do in a short period of time, right? Madam Phillips?
I'm good. I agree with everything you all have talked about. We're on the same page.
All right, we had a very tight agenda. We got one last item that I am going to hold for the next meeting, and that's our juvenile and domestic violence work group. We touched about it a little bit here, but I think that deserves a full vetting of time. And since we are late in the hour and I'm trying to be mindful of your time, we have 6 more minutes. I'm going to open it to all of the members to announce any community issues or anything that's good for the order before we wrap it all up. Colonel Holmes.
I could go through my numbers real quick.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I apologize. We have to do that. That is the most important thing. Let's do what your numbers are in the jail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a total of 11 juveniles, all males. They're all housed at the Paul Ryan facility. We have 0 COVID cases, and they all are getting education, and none of them have any serious injuries to report. So that's a good thing.
I'm very happy to hear you have 0 COVID cases. I'm hearing through the various agencies that COVID is back because folks are missing time from work because of COVID coming back into our communities. So let's be just very mindful of our population that are incarcerated in jails and detention centers, that they are going to get the same level of scrutiny for COVID. I know folks think that COVID is a myth. It is not. It is science. and we need to test for it, and we need to take the appropriate measures to make sure that it doesn't spread within a locked, confined facility. So keep testing, Colonel Holmes, because we're seeing it in the courthouse. A lot of folks, I'm sure in Miss Michelle's office and my office and other parts of this courthouse, folks are coming down with COVID and they're taking 2 and 3 days off to recover.
Yes.
Assistant Chief London, what's your COVID numbers? You love to get that report. How many children you have in custody?
0.
All right, you got that one. Any other things that are good for the order?
DJJ.
DJJ, how
Yes.
many children do you have in custody? Any
We
COVID?
have, as of yesterday, we had 59 in custody, 37 black males, 8 white males, 7 Hispanic males, 7 black females, and 0 white and Hispanic females. As far as COVID, I don't have a number, but they usually would send out if there was anything happening as far as COVID in the detention center. We haven't received anything in regards to COVID. So,
Mr. Bush, I'm going to ask you moving forward, if you could please delineate whether those children are Broward County children or other community children, just so the folks that are on the call listening are aware. Our detention center is a regional detention center, and children from other communities could be housed in our facility, and the number would look higher than it ordinarily is with respect to Broward County children. Because there are 59 children in the Broward County Detention Center does not mean that there are 59 Broward County children. There could be 10 Broward County children and children from other facilities. We do not know. So I'm going to ask, as we move on in the future, Mr. Bush will report the total number of children and then report the number of Broward County children, because I think that is what is important to us here in this community, how many children that we have in that facility and how long they're in that facility. If you could accommodate us with that, Mr. Bush.
no problem, sir.
Judge Robolo, strike that, Judge Ross.
Sorry, nothing. Thank you.
What are you saying with respect to the children in detention?
I'd like to do a shout out for how well some of our detention deputies do with the kids and how they treat them like kids and how they think of innovative way to interact with them. And they seem, when they're coming to court, they have really good relationships with the kids. And I just wanted to commend DJJ for some of the detention deputies that I have in my courtroom, particularly Miss Davis. She's really wonderful.
I have to echo that as well, Judge. I have for many, many years said to myself, but for some very patient transport deputies that really, really have the trust of those children and confidence in those children, we have really good outcomes in our court system with those children. So DJJ, that's one place where you're doing really good work. Your folks that are transporting them to and from court and bringing them into courtrooms really have a pulse of those kids. And it's important that we have folks that are mindful, patient with the children as they're being transported, because that's the most precarious time for the child when they're in transport.
And Mr. Bush over there, not this Bush, but Mr. Bush over there, I feel like he should be running that detention center. He does such a good job. So
I'll echo that. No, I'm not gonna. He does do a good job. He's been there forever, and it's one of the places where they've been well. If you have consistency of people, and he's been there for a long time, the children gain trust in him.
Right.
Listen to him when he tells them the things they need to hear. So I appreciate you giving that feedback. The general public doesn't oftentimes hear that. DJJ doesn't think that we praise them enough when we actually do. We just hold them accountable like we hold everybody else accountable. But they do a good job with the transport of our children. Any other feedback, Ms. Michelle, or anything good for the order? You guys got any programs coming up in the office?
Like I said earlier, we are working on the programming for the gun violence in the youth, and there'll be further expungement workshops. We've had some really great success with that. I'll be able to report on that probably by the next meeting for the next dates.
All righty. Anyone
Chair?
else? Anything? Yes, Mr. Walters.
It may not be good for the order, but it'll make me feel good just to say congratulations to Deputy Chief London, and you should have been the chief, but that's okay. That's the next step up. Just keep that in mind. And Marcia, we got to get together. I got to bring you up to date.
Okay, just say when.
And on that
Thank
note,
you.
I'd like to leave on a positive note. It is always a good measure to have high-level decision makers keeping a pulse on what's going on in our community with our children. Assistant Chief London, congratulations on that incredible promotion. We look forward to you staying along with us through this ride and help guiding us through the pitfalls of Fort Lauderdale and the other communities. We also appreciate Colonel Holmes and the commitment from the sheriff to have an actual decision maker at this meeting. I was over at the legislative delegation. Sheriff had all his colonels lined up.
Yeah.
Colonel Holmes is there.
Yeah.
It's good to have a decision maker at this particular meeting so we can cut through all the minutia and the red tape. But with that being said, I'm going to call for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Not needing a second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Y'all have a good weekend. Have a happy and fruitful Veterans Day, and I will see you all at our next meeting. Enjoy.
Everybody.
Thank you.